What's kind of funny about this project versus crowdfunding campaigns we've done in the past, we promised it at the end of our Wildlands Kickstarter. If we could hit a certain goal, we would do it. And it's something that we've always wanted to do anyway. Knowing the limitations we had to set up for ourselves, it's allowed for the beginning of our sci-fi journey in a very contained and expandable way.
The first thing we did was send a survey out to our backers and ask people what they're interested in. And then within that, we said, well, what are we excited to do? Like, what's going to be a chance to do something that's artistic and useful on the table, and it will be fun to make and can be contained by a small number of sculpts.
Science fiction is really broad, and so we realized kind of from the start we couldn't do all of it, and we shouldn't try to do all of it because we don't need to. Whereas in fantasy, if you establish a style for your buildings, you want your other buildings to probably look good next to them. In science fiction, you go from one planet to the next. Nothing's necessarily going to look anything like what was on the last planets. Ultimately, we decided that something that felt kind of like you get in the grittier side of Star Wars, like the Millennium Falcon or Mos Eisley, as opposed to the Imperial ships. For particular pieces, I was looking at bits of, this greebling, as it's called, the small details on the surfaces. Definitely things from Star Wars, Firefly, definitely actual things from NASA, the International Space Station, and real spacecraft, just to keep things grounded in a certain reality. And Michelle did a lot of good research ahead of time, just kind of finding bits all over the place, images from cool space video games and paintings that artists had done. So it was a pretty broad net for inspiration. Yeah.
With Starforged, we've actively done the start to finish. Each piece has been done digitally. It's a new endeavor for us in terms of the dev team has been excited about it, as also as hesitant as they are excited, I think. When you're used to one medium and being asked to kind of adjust to a different one, there can always be potential for a hiccup to happen.
So right now I'm working on the detailing for the turret piece. So I have the base already done here. So the base is done, and I want to do some of the things like the finer details on top. So I want to be doing the piping on it first. So I made the lines where I want the pipes to go, and then I'll turn that into a 3D volume. Since you can zoom in so hard, you kind of like lose the idea of the scale. In a sense, since I can zoom in like this much, and this is like a very small amount on the piece, like even a 0.25 millimeter might seem very large at that scale, but it's hard to like step back sometimes and realize how minute of a detail that is. But this is like a larger piece, so it's a little bit easier to keep the idea of scale. But when it comes to things like smaller things, like I worked on like the bed, and that we had to like scale it up, since when they printed it out here, they put a mini next to it. It just looks like a standard like human would not be able to fit into it.
I get STL files from our sculptors that I import into there's a specific program that our printers use, and I put them in there. I am kind of like making sure they're to the right scale and making sure that they're positioned well so I can fit as many as possible, but that are going to print well. 2 hours later, I go take them off the printer, get the supports off, wash them, throw them in the cure so they're ready to go there. Eli did a lot of the core pieces, including this one. So he reached out to me and we talked about, like, he was like, asked me how much space I need. And when he showed me like how much he could make, I'm like, oh, that's way more than I usually have. So.
Although we did do some of this for Lowtown, where we created digital prototypes of certain shapes so we could just test the geometry. Here we've taken that a step further, where I've done some sort of test detailing, and then that was printed up. So Hamster and in some cases Aaron were painting, just testing, is the depth good? Is the pattern too big, too small? Are there shapes we like or don't like in terms of the way they interact with the light and the colors and so on?
We were talking with the factory about their airbrush capabilities, so I was convinced that this was going to be at least partially an airbrush paint scheme. So I was trying out patterns based on the sculpt, masked patterns, sort of freehand onto different parts of the piece. I really like this version that looks pretty machine made, like it's straight out of a factory. So I thought that was going to be a really cool effect. And it turns out for sort of the rugged lived-in look, dry brushing was going to be okay. It has the scratchy effect. I was a little nervous because of all the flat parts that would cause the streaking, but I think that actually serves the look in a way that I like. After testing a number of colors, we finally landed on something fairly close to this green with orange glowy accents. And I thought this was going to be the scheme, but in the back of my mind, I wasn't super excited about it. And then I put it down for a while, and I actually painted some terrain for another game for us to play test, Star Wars Shatterpoint. I thought about doing sort of that desert khaki style that we see in a lot of Star Wars onto this set, and I sort of forgot about this neutral gray scheme, sort of almost rough battleship metal type scheme that I did on that terrain, and I sort of had a eureka moment of applying it to this set. And what I really like about it is this warm, cool contrast. The base color is kind of this reddish brown that gives us that lived-in, almost weathered effect. One thing that informed the scheme too, obviously on a set like this, an environment like this, there's going to be a lot of metallics, but our pieces are magnetized. Again, there is no dead side. So when they do actually appear on the pieces, there's details that make it a cohesive part of the look as opposed to a random magnet in the middle of the piece. So I think the scheme is fairly easy to paint and execute. The sculpt is great for taking paint. It's just a matter of you got to paint every side. So it's been a new sort of challenge of how to pace out the batch painting where there's no dead side to place the piece down. I have to like paint most of it, set it down, pick it back up, and paint it again. It doesn't take a whole lot of extra time necessarily, but it's just a new thing to remember. So that's been a new part of the workflow and how to like design the efficient batch painting process.
One thing that we really wanted to embrace here is the three-dimensionality of it. The fact that partly because these are, mechanical or high-tech pieces, we could really use all the sides of the piece. And I've been trying to just make everything as much as possible sort of transformational so that a piece that, is a catwalk also becomes a pipeline. And then the pipeline can also potentially be, split in half and become a railing, an armored bunker railing, for example. Or these walls can flip upside down and work upside down as, kind of hardened bunker units. Everything is being looked at from all sides and kind of, we try to make it not just look good, but like have a rational function and an interesting story to tell from every direction.
For this particular one, all the sculpts are 360-sided, so we have to make sure that everything that we're doing is captured, really showing off the piece from every side. We need videos, that show off the offering. We also are working on stop motion, which is a really fun way to just kind of show off the pieces and what they can do. Because we're trying to show off how versatile they are. We've got, builds that sort of break down and reassemble into other builds. Because we can incorporate, technology and science a little more. The animation and the graphics that we can do is going to be a lot more computer heavy. At the same time, we love our analog roots. We love having, hands-on physical pieces. So we're still shooting things analog, but just the way that they're displayed is just trying to give more of like a digital, futuristic, technological feel to it. Ray has been really great about coming up with, ways to show off the pieces really well.
The background that we start on here, this sort of planet that we're on, was put together by Syl, our producer. Using Photoshop and After Effects, I was able to sort of split it off into different layers here as we kind of peel away from the planet to add some depth to it. All these little star and space assets, a lot of them come from NASA libraries, basically, and we composite them all together into this fun fluid image here, and then into a little starfield wormhole we go.
I think of all the departments, media is probably the most collaborative because we need the dev team to make the pieces, we need the painters to paint the pieces. Casey takes most of the photos.
You can really set these up and light them in any plethora of ways. You're not tied down to having to light it one way to make it look good.
It really feels boundless with how neutral the colors and tones and even the look of these pieces are, but still like having so much detail that will just pick up anything you want it to and like set the scene for whatever scene you need set. When I first saw the sci-fi pieces put together, I actually had forgotten how influential sci-fi was when I was growing up. Because the first time I saw kind of an exterior like this with an interior as well, I was like, oh, that's like a Doom 3 map. And I was just reminded of all of this nostalgia I had for all of these different TV shows and media and stuff like that. And literally every single time we get another thing for me to shoot and light coming out, I'm reminded of something else. So yeah, it's pretty incredible. I'm a lot more inspired by this stuff than I actually expected to be. And I think a lot of people here feel the same way as well.
The reception has been better than we could hope for. Going into sci-fi, we were kind of nervous. We had done sci-fi in the past in the resin days, and it did not perform particularly well. And so we were definitely nervous that we were going to have a lot of people who generally show up just not want to engage at all because, it's an entirely different genre. We've been making more efforts the last couple of years to diversify and just kind of show our stuff working with a lot of games because the reality is we're making system agnostic things. Anything we're doing can be used in any game that uses minis that make sense and look appropriately sized next to our stuff.
Well, what was really exciting to me is that the amount of pieces we were able to bring to the convention, first of all, and I think that I alone was already kind of in shock with what was there on the table, but then people interacting with it, there was people that I've talked to who haven't backed us since our first Kickstarter, and now they're going to be joining the sci-fi Kickstarter because they're so excited, and I think that it's helping us get into the world of tabletop gaming beyond just D&D.
And the nice thing is, with our primarily D&D audience, we got a lot of, we went from a lot of people saying, yeah, I might grab something just to support them, but I'm not really interested because I don't play sci-fi games, to a lot of those same people now going like, okay, I'm not interested in playing sci-fi. However, that pipe system is great for Artificer stuff, so I do actually want to go big on those. And other people being like, you know what, this stuff looks incredible, and I think I want to try some sci-fi games, which is another thing that we really want to do, is we've been doing these things called Forge Reports for a while, and the main goal with those is to just introduce our existing audience to other games so that we can get them playing different kinds of games.
The focused nature of this Starforged project means we can give more robust pieces that have multi-functions right out of the box, rather than having to make this and make 6 other pieces that are compatible with it to make the idea work. It makes our product focus more on what's better for the game table. Sci-fi as a genre is a philosophical look at the future. That's at the heart of it. It's like it should be exploring something that we think every day or we think is natural every day that we never question, and it should question it.
I was raised on sci-fi to the point where I actually was named after a character from Star Trek: The Next Generation, Chief Miles O'Brien.
I'm very excited, partly just to see what all the backers will do with all this, because having played with it for a couple hours in physical form and discovered a bunch of new things already, I know there's going to be a lot of great stuff that all the creative people that buy our terrain will come up with. And that's probably for years down the line, we'll be seeing people posting things and be like, hey, I never thought of that.
We're still discovering new ways to build these pieces. It's been months building these things, or still each day finding another way. Hey, if you flip this thing around and do this, whatever, you can find another way to build stuff. So it's really been exciting that there's layers of discovery in there.
As a Paizo lover through and through, when the playtest finally drops for Starfinder 2nd Edition, I'm locked in. They sold me on Pathfinder, and it's been really fun to use our terrain for that. And now getting to try a whole other medium with the same type of game that I know and love is going to be a lot of fun.
Even if it doesn't save me either, at least I get my vanity buy-in where I show aliens my high school yearbook. Boom. That's my senior yearbook photo. They almost didn't let me put it in. So I don't know if that'll save anyone. Probably cause more damage than help, but
And it's not the only style in the universe, and we hope to do many others, but we could make it, you know, a unique thing unto itself and not be so worried about, you know, future style compatibility, as long as the pieces will work with everything we make down the line in terms of the geometry.
Endless versions of alien planets. There's wild compatibility stuff we can do. There's whole different styles of modular spaceships and space stations. I mean, there's just cool contraptions, you know, a whole modular robotics kit. There's so many neat things we can do. It's almost overwhelming, all the possibilities. So I can't wait at some point to go back in and see where else we can explore.